So let's talk some Gators right now. David Waters does a great job with Gators Breakdown, and he's kind enough to join us on the Zach Gelb Show. David, appreciate the time. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. Not in my normal setup, but we can still talk Gators no matter where we're at.
Yeah, so let me start you off. How do you kind of process now, a few days removed, that loss to USF and now making Billy Napier 20-20 as the head coach of the Gators?
Yeah, certainly not with the heightened expectations Florida came with that that you thought the first loss of the season would be to USF. You got LSU coming up this week, Miami after that. Okay, that's when most people had Florida penciled in to maybe get their first loss. This was supposed to be the year Billy Napier started 2-0. Instead, this is the fourth straight year he's starting 1-1. So you were supposed to ease into the season before you had that road trip to Baton Rouge, and you get upset by USF. And yeah, there's some angle to that where USF is probably better than many people thought. Preseason, better than what they have been, but at the same time, this is year 4 for Billy Napier. You're not supposed to be in this position, no matter how good USF can be, where you are losing that game. And the preseason expectations are you bring back so much talent for this team. You bring back DJ Lagway, and for now, through 2 games, it's like Florida's now still trying to find their way in the Billy Napier era. And the most aggravating part of it for Gator fans, this game followed so many patterns that have cost Florida so many times before. It didn't matter who you were playing. It wasn't a clean operation, and this time it really doomed Florida against a team they probably could have, should have beaten in many ways.
They still have, and I know you were talking about it, 8 ranked opponents currently still left on this schedule. There's no way Billy Napier surviving this season, right? He's going to get fired at some point in the season, you would imagine.
You'd have to think so if this team comes out like they did Saturday. It's good. It's a big ask with the schedule to go by what we saw Saturday night and think he can dig himself out of this again. So hey, if he does it again, credit to him. But why do you have to dig the hole to begin with? And this one loss, yeah, if Florida does bounce back, does it still keep you from a? I mean, don't get me wrong, we're probably getting way ahead of ourselves here, a potential playoff, but. Yes, a lot of Gator fans will bring up to you, well, Notre Dame lost to NIU last year, and look what happened. Well, they also had a win against Texas A&M to kick off the season. So it wasn't like, the resume is the same, and they weren't going into games against LSU and Miami and Texas coming up as well. So it is a bit of a different circumstance. It is a lot to ask to repeat what he did again last year. Maybe the part of hope is, DJ Lagway still hadn't found his rhythm yet by missing so much practice. So if he decides to get hot this week or coming up, you go on some kind of run. But most people already had Florida pegged at 10-2, 9-3 if you were going to make a playoff. And now with the schedule coming up, you have to overcome this loss to USF, and that really is a hard ask. And I think the record you may have to start asking yourself is 8-4. I think the administration will stay with Billy Napier. 7-5 is when the question really starts happening. Anything worse than 7-5, there's no way he survives that.
David Waters here with us. If you're looking at him getting fired in season, when do you think the earliest that this could go down?
I think they will give at least the first bye week. So Florida has LSU coming up, they have Miami coming up, and then there's a bye week before the Texas game. So I don't think anything would happen before that bye week, before Texas. And then after that, after the bye week, you have Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and then another bye week before Georgia. So I would imagine it would happen during one of the bye weeks if it came to it. If you don't look great in these next 2 games, it might be time to pull the plug that first bye week.
So I'm saying it's inevitable that he's going to get fired at some point this season. I know how this national discourse works. People are going to say, could there be a reunion with Urban Meyer? Oh, John Gruden, he wants an SEC job. Maybe the Gators will hire him. I'm already seeing those 2 names on social media. Urban Meyer and John Gruden aren't coaching the Gators next year, correct?
Urban Meyer, no. John Gruden has been rumored to say he wants to coach in the SEC. I don't think Florida would go that route. I know there's some out there who say they may. If so, I don't think he'd be on the top of the list. I think they'd have to get down the list a bit. Maybe be told no by a few people before they get to John Gruden. So no, I don't see those 2 polarizing names. Don't get me wrong. It would be for great talk radio. It'd be great for Gators Breakdown, but I don't see Urban Meyer or John Gruden being the head coach.
And then also, I know other 2 names that will emerge. We went through the Lane Train stuff last year. I know people also love to throw Dan Lanning's name out there. I have a tough time believing Dan Lanning or Lane Kiffin are leaving their current jobs to go take the job at Florida.
I mean, There's been some talk Lane would love the job at Florida. I don't know if he would love it with Scott Strickland as AD. I think that might be some kind of hold up there. He's just been extended as well, so that might lend itself also. There's a storyline there with Scott Strickland being a little more secure now. Does he feel a little more available to make up a decision on Billy Napier? So because he's not really tied to Billy Napier anymore with that extension. And then Dan Lanning, yeah. I mean, why would you leave Oregon for Florida? I mean, as the orange and blue glasses myself, yeah, that sounds great. On the but on the national scale, or looking at it from a neutral observer, no, I don't see Dan Lanning leaving Oregon for Florida. So Lane Kiffin, I could still possibly see. Dan Lanning, no, I do not think that would happen.
And Lane would be, I think, well received, obviously, by Florida fans. Everyone wanted him last year, right? If people kind of soured on Lane, or that would still be a hire that people would be like, okay, Florida's back with Lane Kiffin.
You've heard the name, of course, creep up the last few days. It did sour a little bit when Billy Napier beat him head-to-head in the Swamp last year, and they were like, "Oh, see, I told you he wasn't who we said he was." And a lot of people were trying to be proved right about Lane Kiffin, but I still think if you go to Twitter right now, it is still mostly Lane Kiffin, the name that comes up the most.
You know, another name that I didn't think of over the weekend when I was thinking who could get the job whenever it does open up and they start to hire for next year, and I'll give credit to Bill Bender, who threw this name out there. What about Jedd Fisch, who, went to Florida, was a GA at Florida? I know it's many years ago, but that would be, I don't think it's a hire that people are jumping up and down, but I do think Jedd Fisch would be a solid hire.
Yeah, of course, what he did at Arizona was pretty impressive there against the Washington job. And I think a lot of people will be hung up on what does he do this year? Second year at Washington, what are the results after year two? So, yeah, you'd probably have some time, of course, if you decide to fire Billy Napier in one of those bye weeks. But Jedd Fisch, I think, would certainly be an interesting name because of the Gator ties. And if he does kind of turn around another program here, there's a lot, say, hey, he's done it with two programs. Could he do it with Florida?
Forget coordinators for a second, or forget any coach that isn't a Power 4 coach. When you look at the Power 4 coaches, are there any other names that could be on the Gators' radar if they do end up moving on from Billy Napier?
Brent Key at Georgia Tech I know that the tie to Georgia Tech there too as well. But could the stature of a Florida program in the SEC, potential to win national championships? That'd be one name I'd be interested in from my view angle, from my angle on this. So, but I think the ties at Georgia Tech do kind of make that a little harder. But Brent Key, I think, is the name, especially if he takes Georgia Tech to say the ACC championship. While Miami may be good, Clemson may be good, FSU might be good. But that team's in the ACC title game. I think they could turn some heads as well.
If they go the coordinating route, Glenn Schumann, I would imagine at Georgia, the DC, he's got to be the first guy that they probably call, you would think?
I think maybe because, the Kirby's assistants have done well. So I think that comes at it from well. But you mentioned Dan Lanning. I'll go to Oregon and go Will Stein. I know he's very young, but that Oregon offense is – we know what the Oregon offense is, and it's coming along. I think if you go coordinator route, he'd probably be a popular name as well. I think that would come up around Gator Nation. I've heard it in my Gators Breakdown Plus Discord. We've had the conversations as well. His name comes up a bit. So to me, I think coordinator route, that might be the top two, Schumann and Will Stein.
And I'll throw two more out there, and they're current head coaches. John Summerall at Tulane, Alex Golesh, who just beat Florida. Would there be interest, you think, in either of those two?
Golesh, I could see it with the state of Florida ties already. So, look, they beat Florida this past weekend, and there's USF texting players that are committed to Florida and say, hey, did you see what happened? So, there's a connections to the recruits already from USF, and all you got to do is just drive up to Gainesville. So I do think that name would be in the mix as well, and especially maybe seeing how USF finishes out the season. They have Miami this week as well, so that might go a long way. I could certainly see him on the list. As far as Summerall, I think many people would kind of relate it to Billy Napier coming from Louisiana again, and not really wanting to go the Sun Belt route, or a coach from Louisiana making his way to Gainesville once again.
It's interesting because you have a coach on a smaller level have that success, and then you get a big job. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Billy Napier now has brought in a lot of talent, right? That's well documented. Ultimately, why does it not translate well enough on game day, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's just if you follow Gator Nation this week, it's all about, man, what is this offense doing? It's just, DJ Lagway doesn't look the same. Is it the injuries? Is it the time he's missed? But it's just an offense that brings everybody into a phone booth. You don't spread out and use that Florida speed. And he's recruited the speed really well, especially at the wide receiver position, and hasn't necessarily seen it yet. So a lot of it, look, we all love Steve Spurrier, we all love Urban Meyer, and the points that we put up week after week after week, and you don't get that. Thought that you were getting that with Billy Napier, maybe this year with DJ Lagway. Haven't gotten it yet. So it's more about the offense not really being able to get out of the way of itself and become a consistent threat.
Wrap it up with David Waters. I actually remember when Anthony Richardson and Billy Napier, right, they had that game up against Utah and they won. And I said, in a weird way, it actually may be a bad thing that they won the game, because now all the expectations are going to go to a crazy level and people are all going to go all in. And obviously, they haven't won enough ultimately. With DJ Lagway, we keep on hearing how great he is and what he's supposed to be as a quarterback. I know he hasn't been fully healthy through his time at Florida, and that was documented in the offseason. What do you still think, since Richardson ultimately, I know he went 4th overall in the draft, but he hasn't panned out to be the player that we thought? There wasn't consistency at Florida. What do you think Lagway will ultimately be when his time is over with the Gators?
Yeah, Lagway coming out of high school was a much better thrower, passer than Anthony Richardson ever was coming out of high school as well. So you do hope that that's still there. I do think the time he's missed has caught up with him a lot more than I thought it would. So it really might have to determine how this season goes. Like, if these next 2 games don't go well, what did the players around him think? For right now, this Florida offensive line hasn't played up to its potential either. And the help around him hasn't necessarily been there either. Now, there were drop passes against USF, and there were some drops in the bucket that that were just right there. There were some throws he missed as well. So it just hasn't really become consistent. And a lot of question coming now is, hey, look, we didn't see Anthony Richardson make the progression. We saw Graham Mertz get better in year 1, but you go back to, like you said earlier, the games against Miami last year, the game against Texas A&M last year, Graham Mertz didn't look to take that next step. DJ Lagway comes back. He's in his 2nd year. Where's the next step? So it might just really take some time to figure out, because there's so many factors in play because of his injuries of where this is at. But I just wonder where the whole team is by the time we get to a place where he's maybe healthy enough. And I don't know where it goes from there, because I don't know what the team is like. And it's a scary proposition for DJ Lagway that, hey, the team might be checked out by the time I get to where I need to be.
If they fire Napier, is Lagway definitely gone as well? Does he just say, I'll hit the portal?
I would lean that way, but I don't think it's 100% fact. He loves Florida. There's some connections to Florida, a lot of NIL connections at Florida. His girlfriend's on the softball team, so how much does that go into it as well? So there's some other factors, I think. And he loves Florida. He really loves Florida. I think Florida would have been considered whether Billy Napier had been there or not. Tim Tebow was a big idol and role model for how he wants to conduct himself as well. So I think there are some Florida connections, but in today's college football world, nothing will surprise me. And he might also just say, hey, a cleaner start, a reset somewhere might be better. So the reset might be a new head coach at Florida, but it also might be somewhere else.
Last thing I'll ask you, David Waters. The name will get thrown out there if they fire Billy Napier. What happens when Scott Strickland calls Nick Saban? How do you think that phone call goes?
It goes, I'm enjoying game day. Miss Terry likes me home. I'm not. I might be interested, but Miss Terry says no. Miss Terry says no.
You're probably right. Make sure you check him out. Gators Breakdown. David Waters does a great job. David, appreciate it. Good chat.
Thank you.